Go ahead and call the Finance Committee to order. All committee members are present, as well as various other council members and mayor. This evening we're going to discuss ordinance 2022-18, which is a supplemental appropriation. The primary aspects of this are increased appropriations for all of the various departments, service parks, police, fire, for increased fuel costs, as well as additional money that needs to be appropriated for the income tax refunds and the RETA services related to that. Having said all that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Director Miller to elaborate more.
Yeah, I provided all of you tonight a detailed spreadsheet that kind of shows by line item. I'll just go down through it, just because we have enough time. The first line item is $500 for building department fuel. So some of the departments had smaller amounts with the fuel increases. Those departments that use a lot of diesel had larger increases. So this was the building department is $500. Then we're requesting a temporary advance to the police grant fund. We are going to receive a body armor grant, but I don't know if we're going to get it this year or next year. It's a reimbursement. So this just covers that expense, and then we'll move the money back once we get the grants. Then the next line is general fund income tax collection fees. These are the 3% RETA fees, where our collections are coming in a little bit higher than we thought. I just want to make sure we have plenty of money to cover us through the year. And that's 5% of the total, because the other, 95% of the total, because the other 5% is in Fund 350. The next line item is the income tax refunds. As I shared it at our last meeting and in my report, income tax refunds are very high, primarily due to work from home. We're seeing it in the withholding accounts, which shows us that it was withheld from somebody's check, but now it's being refunded. We're increasing it by $300,000 total. That should be more than enough, I'm hopeful. So we'll only spend what is needed. The next line item is legal fees. Joelle provided an explanation in her monthly report for August. And this is, we only pay the attorneys when we call them. So we're billed an hourly, and some months, some years we have more than others. I know for the remainder of the year we have IAFF negotiations, which usually cause a little more, FOP negotiations, which take a little more legal time. I know with all of the contracts that we've been doing for the construction, there's just a little more time being used. And Joelle can share more if you have additional questions about that. The next line item is the fire fuel. They operate primarily diesel vehicles, so theirs is up quite a bit. Parks and Rec fuel, again. Police fuel is a smaller increase because they're all gas vehicles. So it's kind of an interesting way to look at it. And then the street and sanitation departments, again, they use a lot of diesel, so we're adding money for their gas. The next line item down is the Grandview Yard Tip Fund. This is where we kind of estimate. We don't get a number each year for pilots. So once we get the pilots in, then we do some corrections just to make sure the budget matches what actually came in, because it's just an in and an out. Comes in from the county auditor, then we pay it out to the school district and the bond trustee. So this is just making our budget match what actually happened. The next line item is the CETA. This is where we take the money from the JED-Z, and the CETA stands for Cooperative Economic Development Agreement. So we pass the money to the town. JED-Z revenue is up this year, so we have additional money that we need to budget for that. And then the last line items are Fund 350, and again, it's the income tax collection fees and the refunds. So we put 95% in the general fund and 5% in the capital improvement fund. So a lot of this is just cleanup. It's not really doing anything special or new. It's just making sure everything's working out in the budget. Are there any questions?
So the total again is $369.49. I have no real questions, although I just want to point out there's, just so we know, negative fiscal impact. We do have the funds for this.
Correct. If not, we'd have more big cuts.
Questions, comments from other council members?
It's like about 5% adjustment to the annual.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, if no other questions or comments, I would move to recommend approval to council. I know this is just a second reading, but I'm going to make that motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
If with no other business, we are adjourned at 6:38.
Rebecca, did you want us to go?
Yeah,